Hi there, I'm Pete Erickson. I'm the founder of Modev, and we believe that human connection is vital in the era of digital transformation. So, we create events and conferences for the tech space, the largest of which is Voice. It's the number one event in the voice tech industry, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. But first, I want to do something. And that is join you here at the Virtualization Summit. I want to thank Michael Barnett and the team at Ingo for allowing us to partner with them to produce the second installment now of the Virtualization Summit. We've got a fantastic lineup today, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But let me tell you just a little bit about our journey and what's happened with us this year. And I know we're not alone with coronavirus and the need to go virtual, pretty much 100% virtual for this year, and who knows what 2021 has in store. As I said, Voice is our flagship property. This is our main event that we had planned for the fall. So it's going to be in October in Washington, D.C. Attract about 5,000 people from more than 30 countries. Fortunately for us, we had already started planning Voice Global. Voice Global is a 24-hour live stream event June 9th that we started planning back in August. So it allowed us to start to get ahead of the game with regards to how to produce a live stream event. So 6 channels, live stream, start at 9 a.m. in London and go for 24 hours around the world. We put a big challenge on our plates, and I'm glad we did, because now there's no choice. Virtual events and live streaming are the way it has to be for now. But fortunately, we got a little bit ahead of the game. Our year started off great. We did Voice at CES. And as you can see, we had great sponsors like Google Assistant, and so many different companies participated. And we had no idea that that was going to be the last event we would be doing live for quite some time. We then were set to go to Mobile World Congress and do some activations with our partners at Google Assistant. And we can see what happened there. We then headed to South by Southwest. We had a building reserved, great programming set up, again with our partners, the global partnership team for Google Assistant. And we all know what happened there. So we missed out, along with our partners, on engaging tens of thousands of people. And we had to come up with new ideas and new ways and creative ways to stay in contact with them. So we developed Voice Talks. Voice Talks is a monthly program, about an hour long, that looks at the voice tech industry in interesting ways with regards to what's happening maybe behind the scenes at big companies like Google and Amazon, but also what's happening out there on the front lines of the industry. How are people dealing with this crisis? How is voice technology going to help industries move ahead? And how do we engage the community and even have a little fun amidst all of the crisis that we're currently experiencing? We're excited about Voice Talks, but it really was born out of necessity. And it's been quite a journey. I mean, at first we had a studio reserved where we're going to shoot things, and then we weren't able to do that. Then we're going to deliver really good equipment to people's homes. And then we couldn't even do that with regards to some of the lockdown rules, especially around New York. So we had to go all the way down to just shooting the first episode completely with people's in-home devices and grabbing that content and sending it to producers who are producing it on the back end. You're going to hear more about that in just a moment. But it's been quite a journey. And I share it with you because I want to encourage everybody out there to just try new things. This is a time of experimentation. It's a time of innovation. It's a time of trying new things to connect with people. And I look forward to sharing more about that journey. For now, I think it's time to get back to the Virtualization Summit and kick things off. You're going to hear an interview here with Joan Salzman, senior reporter from CNET Magazine, and Sofia Altuna. Sofia is with the global partnership team for Google Assistant, and she is the host for Voice Talks. And we couldn't be more proud to have Sofia involved in our program. Enjoy the interview, and then we're going to have a talk with Sanjeev Kalita with Money 2020, and then a live panel discussion that I'll be on, hosted and moderated by Naomi Claire Krellin. She is the CEO and founder of Storycraft Labs. So enjoy today's event, and I look forward to seeing you on the live chat. And if you need anything, I'm Pete@modev.com. I'm happy to share our journey. Good luck.
Thank you, Pete.
Hello there, my name's Naomi Claire Krellin. I am the CEO and founder of Storycraft Lab, where we specialize in the art and science of experiential engagement. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm going to be moderating an incredible panel of brilliant participants. I'm really excited to hear from them personally, and I'm sure you all are too. I have the honor and privilege of interviewing Sanjeev Kalita, and I will also then be moderating the Q&A after the wonderful interviews that you're going to hear this morning. We are here with Sanjeev Kalita, who is the CEO of Guppy, a data analytics platform. But today he's going to be talking to us a lot about Money 2020, where Sanjeev is the editor-in-chief. They have an incredible content story that we're going to learn a lot from. So thank you for being here today, Sanjeev.
Thank you very much, Naomi.
Sanjeev, Money 2020 has had an incredible journey, right? It's gone from its roots in podcasting and content creation to being traded now, sold, right? And an incredible set of face-to-face events happening in all kind of global continents. It's an amazing and inspiring story. Can you describe through the Money 2020 story how you've seen content evolve over time and how we have assigned value to it?
So Money 2020 was started back in 2012. Money 2020 covers the fintech, payments, and financial services innovation. And back in before 2011, if you were at a cocktail party, the quickest way to have everyone run away from you was to say that you worked in payments. And then in 2011, 2012, things were changing. You had new players like Google creating Google Wallet. You had the retailers and mobile network operators banding together to try to create mobile payments. And the landscape was completely changing. And the definition of what was innovative was changing. So there were hundreds of new stories in the industry. There were thousands of new professionals also in the industry that wanted to learn what was going on, as well as talk about what they were doing. And yet there was really no great place that covered this. And so that's why we built Money 2020. And when I joined Money 2020, it was literally 4 of us in a room emailing and calling our network saying, hey, we're building this great new thing, you should be part of it. And we built this amazing event in Vegas that doubled in volume every through the first 3 years. Then we built an event in Europe and then in Asia. So we've seen it globalize and really brought these new thousands of new stories to the world, and it's been a tremendous part. It's been a tremendous experience, personal experience, just to be part of it.
So bringing these stories to the world that are in a place and in an opening where people really needed to hear those stories, right? That content opportunity was incredibly rich, right?
Absolutely, and not only were the stories different, the way we tried to tell them was different. So, for example, even the caricatures, speakers. The speaker profiles up till that time were photoshopped and looked very glamorous, and we made caricatures of the speakers, and that ironically made them more human, more approachable. And so we had these industry leaders as caricatures, and once again, that helped create a sense of community.
I love that idea of kind of opening up the conversation so that it feels inclusive and accessible, right? And I think that kind of goes all the way back to the roots in the podcast, the idea that let's just talk about this. Let's put great people together to talk about wonderful things and be inspired by one another and learn from one another. So it's nice to see that kind of flow through into, the physical manifestation of the community, right, at the events. So you talked a little bit, Sanjeev, about how rapidly the market was changing when Money 2020 came to be, right? And in part in response to that change. And of course, now we look at our current scenario with COVID-19, and it's almost like the speed of change has become incredibly rapid. It's on hyperdrive. So how, given our current context, are you seeing that content evolution speed up and change?
There's a lot going on, and that we should feel comfortable taking a deep breath and centering ourselves. You know, are you unsure about what's going to happen tomorrow? Do you feel stressed? Are you worried about how things will turn out? I am, and probably most of us are, and likely your community is as well too. So I think that it's really important to have that as we look forward. You know, as events professionals, how do we build for the future? So I'd almost like draw a parallel to, you know, being sheltered in place or, you know, quarantined at home. You know, from a business perspective, our pantries are what we have right now, and how do we create the meals that will feed us, and how do we do this over a long-term period so that we don't get tired of eating beans and rice every single day.
Right.
Going back to the podcast, you know, we launched the Money Pot, a podcast last year, and the idea back then was, you know, to have it support the physical event in Las Vegas and other locations. And so it's almost like, you know, in a food context, the Money Pot podcast was the appetizer to the Vegas event, which was the main course. Yet now, once again, the pantries are a little bit bare, and so something like a podcast actually is the main course. It needs to be a full intellectual meal. It needs to have the depth. It needs to have the breadth that can engage and tell that full story, and help our community. And you know, once again, it comes back to serving our community. Our community is trying to figure out how the world is going to turn out, and that's why I think it's incumbent upon us as industry professionals to help put out the stories and help put out the innovations, to help talk about some of the issues that we're all facing and will continue to face in the future.
And I wonder to what degree there are a couple of analogies. I love hearing you talk about the kind of appetizer becoming the intellectual meal, right? And what that means. I think there are a couple of analogies that come to mind. One is, you know, the idea of stone soup, that as a community, we all kind of bring what we do have and we can create an incredible banquet, right? From relatively humble origins or kind of singular contributions. And then the other analogy that we might want to talk about is whether our appetites are changing. In addition to kind of looking at the ingredients that we as content creators bring to the table, how are we seeing the audience appetite for content duration, for example, shift and change in the current context?
First of all, I love that stone soup analogy. I love that, and and I think that's very appropriate, because it is very much a case where, you know, I think each of us individually doesn't have everything that we did, you know, even 2 months ago, even a month ago, and you know, who knows how much longer this will go on, and so, you know, from that stone soup analogy, what can we bring to the table and put in the pot, put in that collective pot, that helps create new flavors, that helps create, you know, something that can help serve someone else. And so I you know, I think that stone soup analogy is absolutely perfect. And you know, from an appetite and from a content consumption perspective, you know, I think that you know, this is just something that I have been doing now. Is, you know, for example, I don't have to commute. We don't have to commute to the office anymore. And perhaps many of us used to listen to podcasts or what have you while commuting on the train, or listen to radio. But now that might change into, if you have time, perhaps you're exercising outside your walk. I pace back and forth on my driveway, so my neighbors probably think I'm crazy. But then I'll listen to podcasts at that time. So it's about how do you steal moments in the midst of all of this to try to learn, learn more and add to the knowledge. And then so I think that's as once again, as content creators, like try to create for that use case, try to create for that context.
That's awesome. And it's true. I think we're seeing people look towards content as an opportunity for learning, right? As what can we do with this time and this experience that has been delivered to us? We may not have chosen this, right? But content becomes this incredible vehicle for actually doing something beneficial. Looking at how do I spend that moment of time to access content that is valuable, that will benefit me, that will position me to innovate and excel once the world finds its feet again. Right?
No, I absolutely agree. And I think that once again, talking about the collective in the events industry, this is obviously a big barrier that we collectively need to cross. So I think as the events industry, it's in our interests for all of us to create amazing content to help move society forward, to help move our species forward. Right. And I think that as we can learn from each other, we can get back best practices from each other, and I think that in the end that will help lead to a better world, to a world where once again things are maybe even in a better state than they were then before COVID-19.
And I think that's, one of those incredible opportunities for transformation and innovation that's been uncovered, right? When we move from competition to co-opetition, when we're creating that collective stone soup, we're able to innovate together in a way that we wouldn't have done previously. So it's really interesting to think about that.
No, absolutely. I'm glad to hear that there's a kindred spirit we're on the same wavelength over here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Sanjeev, thank you so much for your time today. I could continue this conversation for hours, but I know that we're already giving the folks here a challenge in terms of editing. But I look forward to kind of continuing this conversation within the panel discussions and kind of in general. So.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and thank you once again for letting me be part of this event.
Oh, right, of course, absolutely. And next, we're going to be hearing from Joan Salzman at CNET.
Thanks, Naomi. Hi, I'm Joan Salzman. I'm a reporter for CNET, and I'm so excited to be here with you guys and also with my guest, Sofia Altuna of Google. Sofia, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do at Google.
Thank you, Joan. So I'm Sofia Altuna. I work in the Global Product Partnerships team for the Google Assistant. So we work really closely with product on designing different features and products for the Google Assistant and then launching them globally.
Now, our main topic today with Sofia is going to be about the upcoming voice talks. But first, I wanted to get a little bit to know you, Sofia. I wanted to ask some questions about your relationship with voice technology. So when you're in a hotel room, back when we all sometimes actually went to hotel rooms, what is the voice command that you would instinctively want to say out loud, even if there wasn't a voice assistant anywhere around?
Oh, in a hotel room. Okay. So I guess in a hotel room, maybe this is because I've already gotten too used to my Google Assistant. So I would really want to be able to definitely turn on my lights and then see what the hotel has to offer. So I'm always really curious about to see if the hotel has like any specials or happy hours. So I would like to ask instead of just calling the concierge all the time. either ask like whatever voice devices in the hotel to see what they recommend in the hotel, and maybe even place my room service order through the Google Assistant.
Now, what about, as you've been working in voice, did you have an aha moment at the beginning of, whether it's at the beginning of your career or working at Google, do you have an aha moment when you realized the power of voice technology?
So I started using voice a long time ago. So I started using voice through voice searching a lot through Google search, and then also through voice texting. So I don't know if this is like the Latin in me that loves to say like long stories and loves to talk a lot, but through using WhatsApp, I normally send a lot of voice notes. You can always see me like walking in the streets of New York City, kind of holding up my phone and like responding to people through voice notes. But it wasn't like then that I realized that like, wow, like if voice was everywhere, this could be really great. But I think like when I first started to hear about voice technology being more applicable, like in places like the home, that's when I really started to have an aha moment, because I've always thought that really speaking is much easier than typing. And again, I don't know if this is because I'm like from Latin America and we love to talk a lot. But when I first got my Google Assistant, and I wasn't working in the Google Assistant team at the time, that's when I really started to like extrapolate, like, wow, if I voice talk so much through voice texting, imagine how much I could be able to do in my house if I could, like, while I'm doing other stuff, if I can actually engage with things in my apartment and through searching through voice. So I think my aha moment was like definitely when I started a little bit of like voice texting and voice searching. And then when I started seeing like Alexa and Google Assistant come out, where I saw that I can extrapolate what I had already been doing to more things that I could do on the go or in the home.
Well, we're all in the home a lot more than we have been in the past.
Yes.
The fact that the coronavirus is happening, that we're dealing with these extraordinary circumstances, that's caused the need for innovation for this programming. Can you talk a little bit about the concept for voice talks and how these extraordinary circumstances have caused things to change a little bit?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So with Voice Talks, we really wanted to create a platform to reach out to the broader audience of people interested in the voice space, especially now as many of the events have been canceled, many of the industry events have been canceled, and a lot of people are working from home. We really wanted to find a way to bring the ecosystem together through this digital channel. So the idea of Voice Talks is that every month we're going to invite new speakers, new industry leaders, and voice influencers to come to the show to tell us the latest trends in the voice industry, the latest advancements in the technology, and even reveal some new product launches. But I think a piece of Voice Talks that we're all really excited about is really like the community portion of it. We want people to share the voice first projects that they're working on, and we want to highlight them on the show and share them with the rest of the community. So we really want everyone that's either watching the show, like the innovators, the people that follow us, to really feel comfortable submitting their ideas, their questions, and their comments. And we'll make sure to address as many as we can on the live show. And even we want to invite some of them to come to the show to even share some of the voice first projects that they're working on. So we really want the community to be part of this conversation.
So who are the people in the community? Who's your target audience? Who are you trying to reach out to? What are the kind of people that you want to become involved?
The target audience is really anyone that's interested in this voice space. So you can be interested either from a professional or from a casual perspective. And really, we're designing this show to be for anyone. And it's going to be platform independent. So we're going to talk about all the different platforms and technologies. And we really want to bring content that is applicable to the questions that people have. So the more questions and comments that people submit, the more that we're going to be able to tailor the content to our audience.
Where's everybody that's working on the show based? I mean, I think you're in New York based
I am
on
in New York.
your picture. I'm in my parents' house in Ohio because I had to flee New York. Where is everybody reporting to be able to do this?
Yeah, I am in New York. It's like the picture behind me like gives it away of the Empire State Building. But I'm in New York and the team is really everywhere. So a lot of the people that we're going to be bringing into the show like normally are in Silicon Valley, a lot of like the product individuals that are going to come to the show, but we have people all over. We have people that are in Seattle, we have people that are in LA, in Washington, in New York City, and globally. And I think that has been a wonderful aspect of this. So even if we were working back in our offices, a lot of us will still be doing like video chats. And it's been really awesome to have a diverse group of people working on this because they bring diverse perspectives from all over the world, which is really what we need to put this together, as this is really intended for a global audience.
So what can we expect from Voice Talks from a content perspective?
The content will really fall in two buckets. So the first one is that with Voice Talks, we really want to bring like insider first industry trends from our top leaders in the industry, whether that's trends, that's business case study, that's tips, that can be demos and product announcements. There's so much to talk about in this space. So I'm really excited to always have a segment about that in Voice Talks. And then the second piece is that one piece that I keep going back to, that is our community. So every week and really every day, we're checking at the types of questions and ideas that people are submitting. And we definitely want to make sure that we're addressing a lot of that and that we're sharing what the voice tech community is working on, and even invite some of our developers into our virtual stage to really share that with the rest of the people. So again, we'll be reviewing those submissions, and then we'll be creating content and segments based on those focus areas that people are mostly interested in.
I'm sure nitty-gritty details people would love to know. How exactly should somebody get involved if they want to get involved? What are the avenues to do that?
Oh, so they can go to our website. Our website is voicesummit.ai/talks. And there, when they register, they'll see a box to kind of submit all their ideas, question, comments, and then they can even upload videos of themselves, either using voice technology or developing an application of voice technology. We've already started to receive a lot of videos, and it's been really fun internally to be looking at them. So I really encourage anyone to keep submitting the videos. We've loved receiving them, and we really want to share a lot of them through our live stream. At the same time, you can also use our social channels. So you can ask us questions and comments, and just remember to always include the hashtag #AskSofia.
What about being able to watch it? Do people need to subscribe to watch, or is it free? How does that work?
Both. So people need to subscribe, and it's free. They can go to subscribe to our website. And when they do, they'll get emails with updates. And then the first show that we're going to have is on April 28th at 2 p.m. And we have a really impressive lineup. So I'm really excited and know that it's going to be a wonderful first episode of Voice Talks.
Beyond the first episode, I think you have a few others plans. Can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about those? And where does it go from there? Is this a longer term idea?
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. I think voice tech is definitely an ecosystem that is changing really fast. It's growing. There's always new applications. There's a constant stream of new innovators and things that we can do with voice technology. So I think this will be really interesting, and a show like this is valuable for the voice community. So I know that we, the Google Assistant team, is really excited about this, and we can't wait to see where it goes. So I know we have a few episodes planned, and then we'll see from there.
So, talk a little bit about some of the big questions you're asking yourself, the big questions you're hearing from your colleagues asking themselves about voice, about artificial intelligence with voice, especially now. What are some of the big questions you want to answer?
Yeah, so now I think as many companies, we've trying to pivot a little bit as like, how can we really be helpful in the home through the Google Assistant, not only getting real-time information and real-time data from like reputable sources to our users, but also how can we make their experiences at home more delightful. So I'm excited in that the first few episodes of Voice Talks will be able to share a little bit about how we pivoted and the new use case that we're coming, and how we can really be useful in this new time of COVID. So I'm really excited to be able to share a lot of that. And I'm impressed by our team at how fast we've been able to pivot some of our strategy and stop some of the things that we were doing, and now try new things to make sure that we're really communicating well to our users during this time, and that we're making staying at home a little bit more delightful for them.
So, the things that most important things people need to remember next episode, April 28th. Did I remember right?
Yes,
April
April
28th.
28th, 2 p.m. Eastern time.
Hashtag Ask Sophia. Is that right?
Hashtag Ask Sophia. Yeah, Sophia with an F.
Sophia with an F. And is there anything else you want to share with this growing community?
I'm really excited to be able to talk to this community. Google, we've never really done something like this. So I'm excited to participate in this, to see what questions, ideas that people have. and how we can really be helpful during this time. And I really like that this is going to be a way for all of us to stay connected and to stay engaged and to really share with each other what would be really helpful for the next generation of voice technology.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sofia.
Thanks, Joan. I really enjoyed our conversation and can wait to see everyone on April 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Up next is Amy Blackmon, and she's going to be talking about how to focus on content can really help drive significant revenue in this virtual space.
Thank you, Sofia. It's great to be here. I'm Michael Barnett, CEO of Ingo. We connect 3 million of the top executives around the world, such as at PGA, Cannes Lion, Money 2020, Sydney Build, and all over the world at thousands of other events. It's my pleasure to be here talking with Amy about content.
Hi, I'm Amy Blackmon, and I am coming to you from overcast Los Angeles and the map of the world behind me, fantasizing about when we can travel again. But in the meantime, I'm here with Michael Barnett. I'm super excited to speak with him about content today. I am the founder and principal of an innovation strategy consultancy, and we work with businesses, brands, and organizations to stand out in their field, engage their audience, and tell their story. Hey, Michael. So I've got a little just context that I'll set up for the questions I want to ask you, because I'm asking myself these questions. So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, when it comes to face-to-face, right? Whether it's in B2B, whether it's in XM, content has always been generated from the live event as the production spend. Now we're in the low touch economy. So what does that mean? What is the production spend that we generate content from?
It's a great question, Amy. And we've spent a lot of time discussing it with some of our other panelists and looking at it ourselves and then looking at it for our own event. And what we found came together almost naturally, or actually quite naturally, for the Event Virtualization Summit that we hosted. And what we've been working with other customers for is when you speak to some of the influencers in the industry and some of the top decision makers or leaders of the bigger organizations, it's what's on their mind, ironically enough, is where the production value needs to be invested. It's taking like a TED Talk and focusing on great stories that capture the concerns and also some of the ideas and solutions to those concerns in the industry. And if you can take those ideas and you can create great content around them, then all of a sudden you've got this great product that can be used not just once, but over and over throughout the year to continue to educate, spread ideas, grow the community. We think that's where the big transition's coming in. Because the communities are no longer just local, they're no longer the New York pet event or the New York food event or the New York dentistry event. They're going to be the global virtual events. You have the opportunity for much greater production, for much greater focus on who are the best storytellers, who are the people that can spread an idea and a message throughout the whole world and get people to really engage and care about that community, care about that industry, and continue to grow it all year long.
Awesome. So the next piece of this question then is, I was thinking about it this weekend when I was getting really amped up to talk to you. I'm super excited about this, is now that we're all indoors, right? And we're under stay at home and we are in the low touch economy. It's all content all the time. And the analogy that came to me is if you dump the Atlantic Ocean into the Pacific Ocean and then ask consumers to sip it through a straw, how do you punch through, noise to signal, signal to noise? How do you get people to be aware, engage, and want to participate in the content? Because now there's no choice but to consume content. I'm already having content fatigue. So what are some solutions that you found to get people to care, pay attention, and engage with it?
Great question, Amy. I think it's a great point. The Atlantic and the Pacific. Before we had the Atlantic of, the amount of content being created on the internet was growing and growing and growing. And now post-corona, the Pacific's dumping in and creating an extraordinary flood of content. I completely agree with that. And so what we're seeing is that the only way to punch through, the only way to get to people is two parts: a great story told by great storytellers that have influence and meaning and gravity. So when we see people going to market with content by somebody who no one's heard of before, or somebody that can't tell a story in a compelling way, they really struggle to get that audience and to maintain that audience, to keep that engagement. Whereas the exact opposite is true. There's this extreme bell curve here of the people that are very good can make a story grow exponentially and spread across the world and create a global audience where there used to be a regional or national audience. So that's where we think, again, going back to your question about production value, that's where you really have to invest. Is a lot of it's in the people and the storytelling. And then how do you get people to engage better? How do you encourage that kind of engagement through things that do Q&A, that do referral marketing, that bring the community together and make it feel like it's their community, not just somebody's community that you happen to be part of.
Awesome. So I love this idea you're talking about how regional events are now global by default because content is available to everybody all the time. So now that you're engaging with your partners and your customers in a new way, how have you seen some of them utilize content to grow their attendance and their communities and their audiences with Ingo?
Amy, very insightful. What we're seeing is that because a lot of our customers we've worked with for a while, we've got this great insight into who's influential within their space, who can drive movement and engagement for their community. So what we're seeing is the opportunity to engage those people and get them to tell a story and get them to grow that community. So with Event Virtualization Summit, with some fashion events, with some global language organizations, with some tech events, what we've done is we've identified the people who have engaged the most people before, who have brought the most people to the event before, and made them really part of the community in a way we weren't able to before. Because now, at a moment's notice, you can say, oh, would you like to be part of this webinar, this summit, this survival summit for the industry? And what we're finding is that everybody's more selfless at the moment. Everybody's curious at the moment. Everybody wants to help their industry at the moment in a way that they may not have been willing to before. So they're willing to tell their stories. They're willing to share some of their secrets. It's funny, I think we even saw, was it KFC or Coca-Cola was sharing the original recipe. I think that's true in almost every industry, that at the moment, people are willing to give away their secrets and some of their insider knowledge in order to help their industry, because they really believe that a rising tide will rise all boats and help grow that industry. So when you combine that with Ingo, when you combine that with Ingo's ability to take those influencers and amplify them, and then amplify the people they reach, and then amplify the people they reach to spread that story across the entire world, we have seen these events in New York or Las Vegas or Dubai or Sydney take on a whole new meaning, where they've gone from regional and national leaders to global leaders that are going from 4,000 or 10,000 attendees to hundreds of thousands of viewers, and continue to get that viewership for days and days afterwards as well.
So really what you're saying is the virtual world is being driven by humans.
Yes, that's so true.
It requires human beings to care about this, to take the initiative to disseminate virtual remote content. So there's still this really important human interactivity and human element in the virtual world that in fact is going to become even more important, even though we are physically distanced from other humans.
I love that point. And it reminds me of what Hervé said, that it's physical distancing, not social distancing. In a lot of ways, what we're entering is a more human moment. We're entering a more human time because, and that's to your question, what's the production value? It's the human things. It's the storytelling. It's the relationships. It's the connectivity. And that makes it possible to go global in a way that wasn't possible before. And to that same point, what's interesting, Amy, is that it's not the swag. It's not the location. It's not the swimming pool. It's not the sunshine. It's the human things. It's, can you captivate me? Can you give me an idea that I won't get somewhere else? Can you give me the chance to interact with somebody in a way I won't get to interact with them somewhere else? I find it really interesting. We've had lots of conversations about the value of events now. And I think before we all thought events were about the physical location and bringing people to that physical location. But what we're starting to see in both our experiences of spreading events and growing them, but also in what people value, it's not just the physical location, it's the cognitive space of the event, right? So if before I would have gone somewhere for a fintech event in order to learn things and meet people and engage ideas around fintech. Now, I want an event to create the cognitive space for me to spend time on those ideas with those people for that period of time. Even without the physical space, the cognitive space is still extremely valuable so that I can go and rather than worrying about the things I normally worry about, my emails and my phone calls and my staff meetings, I need you to create an event for me. I need somebody to create an event for me so I can go spend time going deep, thinking richly about any topic, any industry, whether it's fintech or dairy or travel or marketing or experiential marketing, whatever it is. I need that cognitive space. So I need the event. And both buyers need it because they need to go deep into a subject matter to really understand what they want to buy. And sellers need it so that they have the space to engage somebody on the topic that they want to sell them on, as opposed to LinkedIn, as great as it is. When I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, I'm not looking for whatever product I'm seeing. I'm looking for the people I know and the things I want to talk about. Whereas when I'm at your events on a particular topic, I'm actually interested in the things that are being sold to me at that moment in time. That's incredibly valuable. And I think our industry very much undervalues that. And that's where the content becomes so important. That's where the content becomes critical because it creates that cognitive space.
I understand this on such a deeper level. Now, ultimately, what you're saying is we can't rely on the external stimulus of an event and a setting. So catering's out the window, locations out the window, cool resorts out the window, a DJ, all that stuff. The content is the substance of the engagement now. So we are all going to have to up our game with quality and intentionality and delivery, because that's what's going to drive the engagement and all that until we can meet again. All that other stuff's out the window. So in order to avoid an education recession, a knowledge recession, we've got to really drive the quality of what we're putting out, and that is driving the engagement itself until we can all come back together. I love this. I could talk to you all day. This is amazing.
This is really great, Amy. I love it as well. Thank you. And you're helping us even refine our own ideas with Ingo. We've been thinking a lot about the value of events because to these points, right? Like we didn't bring people together and for the location for the most part, right? Like whether it was technology events or consumer marketing or whatever the topic was, we all came together because we have a shared passion for that thing. And we wanted to be together as humans, and we still want to be together as humans as much as we can. So yeah, I love your point that what this is doing is it's driving the production cost and the production value and the content back to what is human.
We may have all gotten distracted with, well, wait, they're going to have Maroon 5 play their closing party. So that's why I'm going to register for this conference, not because I want to learn something. So
right,
we
exactly.
have to kind of go back to basics of what is bringing us together is the shared passion for the subject matter. And that is going to be what drives the convening, not all the other interstitial stuff and the stuff on top that makes it fun. We may have to reverse engineer the thinking of how we convene.
I think it's a great point that when we interact with people and they come to us for help building their events, or even whether it's growing it, the things that we really focus on, growing and helping get sponsors and getting people to show up, or the whole thing, what we find is that sometimes organizers come to us and they say, can you make Las Vegas for us? Can you do the whole thing from getting really great audio visual to producing really great content to getting great speakers to hosting great social interactions and engagements to having great coffee breaks and whatever other activities are involved and activations are involved. And you realize what they're asking for is, can you recreate Las Vegas in a virtual bubble? And that's why I think it's so important to go back to basics, because Vegas has taken years to build up, and Orlando's taken years, and London and Dubai have taken years to build up all that infrastructure that creates context for the basics, right? All of that just creates context for humans to have really great, meaningful conversations about how to connect buyers and sellers and move ideas forward. And that's at the heart of all of this, that content of really great conversations between humans, whether it's one-to-many or one-to-one or an exhibitor booth. It's humans exchanging stories about how to make things better. When's the last time we needed to make things better more than right now? I think that's where people forget the value of this industry in terms of driving the economy forward. There was a great article out about how the UK government's thinking critically about what events are critical to the economy, that even in the midst of all of this, do they need to prioritize to help drive the economy forward? And I think we'll see that for virtual. I think we'll see that for hybrid and physical.
So I want to ask you one last question. In this last 5 weeks, what is something you've seen that's inspired you that you've never seen before in terms of content or an experience that you've had online?
What we saw was that there was a big need for events, people with need for person protective equipment, for masks, for suits, for treatments, weren't able to find and connect with the healthcare manufacturers that they needed to get in touch with. And so what was fascinating is to see the need for those events, to see the need for bringing those people together. But then what we saw was people starting to figure that out, people starting to find the need, like those needs fulfilled by connecting and reaching out to one another so that you could get the person protective equipment. And then what we saw was people starting to manufacture and find new ways of creating it. And then some of our organizers did a brilliant job of putting on mini events or small events and free of charge, just giving of themselves to serve the industry. And at the same time, what was beautiful to me was that some of these were startups. Some of these were new companies that didn't exist a year ago or 6 months ago that had just risen up to the occasion and said, we're going to make these masks, we're going to make these suits in order to help save lives. And organizers in the middle of it rising to the occasion and saying, we're going to facilitate that connectivity. And I think it speaks so much to the importance of what organizers do, of bringing people together so they can help save lives, help solve problems, help move the economy forward.
Excellent.
Well, Amy, this has been brilliant, and I think we could talk all day. I know we've got a ton of questions coming in, but I think you're taking us to the panel, right?
Yes, and I'm looking forward to talking about this more because innovation and future casting in this time of disruption is my favorite subject. And I feel like so many great ideas have already come out of this brief discussion. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what the attendees want to know more about as well. It's been amazing talking to you.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Great, thank you.
All right, do we have audio now? We can do the jazz hands again. Hi, it's everybody from the Q&A panel here. We're really excited to take part in this live Q&A. Now, I've been watching all of the talking on YouTube, and there's so many amazing insights and engagement there that I think we're going to have a great conversation now. And you know what's really interesting, seeing this kind of conversation take place live is that this is community in action. And as I listen to everybody's interviews, right, and the conversations that we've had today and shared today, community and that human connection is that beautiful red thread that connects us all and is connecting our perspectives on content. So I'm so excited to continue this conversation. So there were some, goodness, let's figure out kind of where we should start first. But I think that I'd love to hear about this idea of content fatigue. And I think it came up, in the first conversation where we were talking about appetites changing and how we kind of create a menu of content that responds to our attendees and our audiences. So maybe I can put that over Pete. It's been a little while since we've heard from you. I'd love to kind of hear about your takeaway there, and you can lead us in.
Certainly, Naomi. I think that, fatigue happens in a lot of industries for different reasons, right? And we are all forced to be virtual now. And I think when we talk about content fatigue, if everybody just goes and starts, doing webinars, that's going to get really old quickly. So I think that what we felt the need to do is to create story and connection with people. And that's our approach. So even with our upcoming live stream conference, we don't just want it to be a series of talks. We want it to be a series of stories and different stories about what people are working on. So that's kind of our editorial drive for where we're headed. And I just think it's so important. And, fortunately for us, our partners at Google Assistant came along for that journey, and we created this together, quite frankly. I don't want to take all the credit. They put a lot into this. And so Sofia's involvement and the team behind the scenes there the idea with what we're doing with Voice Talks is to create story, not just stream product pitches or whatnot. But I just think it's so important, and everybody in this in the discussions before this panel touched on that, and I think that that's a big part of what content is now.
I love that idea of the story. And, Sofia, one of the things that I loved hearing you talk about with Voice Talks is just your passion for the medium, right? And your personal story. So you're kind of in this role now of creating an experience for people that you're a part of that community. It's almost like you're the consumer advocate in this situation, right? So maybe you could talk a little bit about, your preference for content in terms of stories. And I'd love to also understand how you've seen your preferences for content evolve over this short and rather kind of extreme situation that we found ourselves in.
Yeah, thanks, Naomi. So I think this whole process honestly has been really great. And even internally at Google, we had already been thinking about something digital for a while, because events are great, but events happen in certain dates, so you cannot have them regularly. So we were always thinking about how can we really keep the community of the voice industry engaged in a space that is accelerating so fast. Yeah. So we really wanted to create something digital. And then this situation kind of like forced us to move quicker in that, so that we're able to launch it sooner. But I think the idea is that now this current situation that we're all living is generating new ideas for us that don't necessarily have to end after this situation ends. So I think like if Voice Talks is something that the community enjoys and that we're able to actually share useful information with the audience, is definitely something that we want to maintain after even COVID. In terms of stories, something that I've been really interesting to Pete's point is like creating stories about what are people using these days, what are people creating these days. So when it comes to Voice Talks, we really want to make sure that we have different segments, and some segments can be to kind of give you the intel of what's happening at Google. How are we shifting internally in the midst of the situation? We also want to hear from the industry. How are people working in the voice space, really dealing with what's happening? How are they evolving? And the third piece, which I keep mentioning that I'm really excited about, is really to hear the stories from our community. How are they using voice more now in this new era? And how will they continue to use it after this?
And I love that idea, you know, that this is less about kind of singular broadcast of stories, but it's using stories to create a dialogue, right? And that's the definition of content engagement, is when we can have conversations with one another and there's a mutual sharing going on, and that learning kind of flows back and forth, you know. So
Exactly.
I get so excited about that. So we've had a question pop up here looking at, and this is interesting to think about how content has evolved over time. I think that we've seen our kind of evolving appetites shift even in the current zeitgeist from like, okay, I've just got 15 minutes here and there when we first started distancing, to now a kind of a wish to return to a kind of extended time period that we're connected, right, in events. But I'd love to also think about what happened in 2008's attempt at virtual events and how that shifted now, you know, over 10 years later. Sanjeev, in terms of the Money 2020 story, perhaps you can help us think a little bit about that shift over time, both kind of macro and micro scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you know, there's so many things that change. The technology changes, consumers change, and what businesses are trying to drive towards change as well too. And you know, so thinking back to like 2008, you know, it was you know, the technology that we had in our houses was, you know, pales in comparison to what we have today, even in our pockets. And so I think that that's one piece of it that I think has improved dramatically. I think from a content consumption perspective, you know, back then, you know, you still had the big networks, you still had sort of mainstream channels, whereas now, you know, you're seeing a lot more stuff with you know, YouTube. You're seeing a lot more things with like Netflix and sort of that more that almost like a point-to-point type of mentality. And then even, for example, in the session today, you know, the chat sessions was filled with people conversing, whereas I don't think that would have happened, you know, 10 years ago. So I think that you know, that there's more openness to even trying to network and trying to meet people on that chat functionality. So I think that it's you know, those are just a couple of different examples.
That's the human connection piece, right? Human, it's like water around a stone. We will find a way to convene with other humans and connect, right? We just kind of uncover those opportunities. You told me a story, Sanjeev, about, and this kind of goes to another question we've had around kind of how long should virtual events be, all day, broken up, or, you know, even kind of micro content. And yesterday, Sanjeev, you told me a story about making a rap video for Money 2020 that you managed to condense into like 2 minutes. So I'd love to hear you share that story real quick.
Yeah, very quickly. As I mentioned, you know, fintech, financial services, you know, that's not necessarily the most exciting sector of the economy if you'd ask the average person. But we want to, you know, we were payment geeks. You know, we love this stuff, and so we made a rap video about being a fintech entrepreneur, and we got several CEOs of major companies in this industry. We got actors from Office Space, from Two Broke Girls, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and we put it together. And you know, I you know, helped write the lyrics and flew to, you know, Silicon Valley, New York, LA, and we put this thing together, and the industry loved it because it was, you know, partially it was like poking fun of ourselves, but it also, like, if you were a payments geek, you know, you really understood what they were saying, and so it was something that could be enjoyed at multiple levels.
I love that idea of, you know, just inserting a little bit of fun. I think I saw one of the comments in the thread here around Easter eggs and the opportunity for that in the kind of virtual event space. You know, just if Sanjeev was to pop up with his rap video because he kind of clicked on an area of the website, that would just, you know, that's that moment of delight that Sofia was talking about, right? And I think that there's a human need for just those moments of joy that maybe aren't kind of fully tethered to kind of weighty content, but they recognize our kind of human need for relief, for connection, in that lighthearted sense. And Amy, I'm going to pivot over to you, my friend, because I know that you can help us all think a little bit about how the cadence of content works and how it relates to the overall journey. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
The cadence, I just want to clarify your question. The cadence in terms of pieces, or the cadence in terms of how often it's released, or all of the above?
Kind of all of the above. You know me,
okay.
I like blended questions.
Okay.
My mind was kind of going to overall, when we think about virtual or experiences, whether they're virtual or face-to-face, we often think about a journey, right? A narrative, and this kind of goes to the storytelling, where we're kind of bringing people along on a story over an extended period of time, you know? So I think that there's a really kind of interesting, innovative way that we can think about how that conveys to the virtual experience.
Super excited about this question. Okay, now I get the question. Okay, took me a minute, sorry. So I think, you know, what I'm a huge fan of in the experiential space is multi-platform and multifunctional content, right? So when you talk about an entire user journey, there can be pre-snacks that are released, right? That are, you know, shareable 45 to 60 second, like fast cut edit with captions and chyrons of like, this is the big idea, right? And it could be stock footage mixed with like some of this gallery footage. Things that are easily shared and that always have a call to action at the end. Want to learn more about this? Click here. Share this, right? Then there could be some, you know, 2D digital assets like a quote sheet or a single page PDF that people can use and bring back to their teams of, here's 5 great ideas. And it's quick, it's easy, it's shareable over email, or you can post it as a tile on your social media. Then it leads you into the next phase, which is to invest your time and sit in one of these forums, maybe for an hour or an hour and a half. And then what happens in the output of this forum? Are there sub forums that happen? And are there micro experiences within the micro communities that break off from this? So there's actually an activity that's an offshoot of one of these, or a discussion group, right? So there's all these different ways, and this is all content. Content doesn't have to be passive. It doesn't have to be on a single format. It can be multifaceted. But the most important thing, I think, is brevity, shareability, and distilling ideas down into bulleted takeaways. Like, people really appreciate that. And I'll just give one quick example, which totally trips me out. I mean, you know me because I talk about this all the time, that actually I think the gold standard for shareable content that is educational and interesting is not a corporation, it's not a brand, it's an NGO and a global institution. It's the World Economic Forum. Follow their Instagram, because you will see their posts get hundreds of thousands of shares, and it's always a new idea, quick captioned, interesting graphics. You can listen to it on your, you know, with no audio. You get the point. There's a call to action, and it's interesting. And that is the way knowledge is being disseminated in real time right now. And that is what hooks people into want to engage in a conversation like this.
I love your brain. I really do. And for those of you that don't know, Amy and I know each other. We adore each other. And I kind of knew that cracking that question would just get her going.
Got you.
I want to add a little bit onto what Amy said, Naomi. I want to add a little bit onto that, if that's all right. So I think that remember that with virtual events, you're not encumbered by a space or time. And I think what Amy said is so important, and that is that you can start delivering value around what was going to be your live event, which now you're going to take virtually. You can start delivering value on that way in advance of the event. So in the months leading up to when that event was going to be, you can start the conversation. You can keep people engaged. And I think that's really critical in order to do that. And then use the event, what was going to be your live event, your virtual event, as a crescendo of sorts, maybe a content crescendo. And while some of us have multi-day events that were planned, break those events down into different types of content. So maybe there are going to be some like long form sessions and workshops that are intended to be that way. They're intended to be learning, taking in, but then use the other times to really drive discussions and have conversation and connect people. I'll just share this last piece about our 24-hour live stream event. It's really 5 4-hour events. It starts in London with a 4-hour event, and then has elements of keynotes and breakouts, and then a lot of conversations and some fun, right? Then we do that on the East Coast. We do it on the West Coast. We do it in centered in Seoul, South Korea, and then on to India. So it's really 5 4-hour events broken down. So it sounds very intimidating, like people are going to be on the line for 24 hours. No way. We're just using it as a crescendo to create a lot of content, create a lot of community, bring everybody together. But then all that content lives, and then you've got after the event. Start to then repackage some of that content, start to deliver it afterwards. So it's going to have a long tail of value, not only for your organization as the convener, but for your communities as well. So build up with lots of content, crescendo on your summit, and then long tail off until you go into the next thing. So that's my 2 cents there.
Yeah, no, I love that idea of value.
Pete, you've spoken a lot and brilliantly about the opportunity here. And I think that at this moment where there's a lot of fear and disruption, it's easy to go, how do I save the revenue I used to make and not think about the revenue I could be making off of a global event? Because if you think about a lot of the brands that plenty of our organizers work with, you work with Sofia's brand, Money 2020 brands, they love a global opportunity, a global monetization, sponsorship, and engagement opportunity. And so that's where I think 2 things really change events permanently. And not to say that we won't have physical events and they'll be amazing and they'll be even better than they were before, because the physical event will be the production venue for a global virtual event.
Yeah.
There's so
Correct.
much opportunity to unlock there, and it's
more
so exciting that
right?
you're going to get the best speakers in the world to your event because they're going to be speaking to the world. And that's doable now. And I think a lot of people push back on this idea of any long-term virtual engagement after this year because they look at 2001 and 2008. And to Sanji's point, the technology is completely different now. The technology then, none of us could be doing this right now. None of us could be watching a video and engaging with each other and streaming it out to thousands of people all over the world. And behaviors changed as well. So now we're used to that. We went from 0 people doing this on the regular to hundreds of millions of people flooding the internet with video conferencing and doing happy hours and telemedicine and everything virtually now. So that behavior change, I think that once that sinks in, we'll see events deeply change and evolve.
And I'm so happy to hear you touch on that. The idea of this kind of evolving approach to the audience. So it's almost like this moment has pivoted us back to say, okay, content first, right? But now we're in reaction saying, actually, audience first. we need to come back again to the audience to tailor that content to them, right? And I'm wondering, kind of, Michael, can you talk a little bit about some of the kind of content evolution that you've seen just in this brief window of time, and how we might better connect with our audience to make sure that we're tapped into the current zeitgeist and responding to that?
Wow, it's such a good question. So the content evolution we're seeing, it's funny because people ask, well, we're going to do a really niche topic for this one part of our industry. I don't know how many people would be interested. And that thinking is very local, regional event thinking, because there's almost no niche in the world that's so small that it doesn't have thousands or tens of thousands of people engaging it globally, let alone any given event that used to have thousands of people at it now can have an audience of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And so what we see is 2 parts. One is the influencers are, you don't want your Fire Festival influencers. You want your genuine, deep, meaningful influencers,
Yeah.
Naomi, Sofia, Sanji, Pete's of the world, who don't just have a lot of followers, but who have people who care about what they say. Those people can really not only engage the community, but give the community something that resonates with them and pulls them in together. And then it's a matter of empowering them with something. We like Ingo, being with Ingo, but you can empower them with any number of abilities and assets to promote the events and bring people together.
I love that idea of again, we're coming back to community, right? And I think, yeah, it makes my heart and mind happy to hear us all thinking with such empathy about the people that we're engaging with through experiences. And I think that that's a constant, right? Whether we're in the virtual space or the physical space, it's that human connection and meaning that really drives the passion for a lot of us. So,
hey, Naomi, I would add that one thing we've done at Voice Talks, which airs for the first time next week, is we've asked people when they register what's on their mind.
I love that. So now you're getting preferences you can respond to.
Now Sophia has, I don't know, Sophia, you want to add on to that, but I think it's been really important for us with regards to how we actually craft the show.
Yeah, I think that's honestly a huge part of the show is looking at the people's comments and ideas, and they're even submitting videos that we've all enjoyed watching. So it's been really great to see what people are asking so that we can tailor that content around it. So the more that people submit, the more ideas that we get, the more we'll be able to really craft content that resonates well with the audience.
That's amazing. And I think that comes back. There was some commentary as well around, how could we use a virtual assistant at an event experience to facilitate this kind of live feedback? And maybe if you liked this kind of session, come up with recommendations. So it's almost like looking at the consumer journey, but as a learner journey, as a participant in events. And I think that has great potential for being really meaningful. I'm so excited to hear about the surveys thing, because I think that gives us data, and it gives us beyond data emotional intelligence, right, Amy, that we can kind of start to apply into kind of the constant evolution of that audience experience. So Sanjeev, I'm curious, with Money 2020, how do you survey and kind of collect information on your attendees' experiences and needs and preferences? And how are you planning to evolve?
That's a great question, and I don't pretend to have all the answers or any of the answers, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I think it is about experimentation. And be willing to try things that will fail. It's about being willing to, for example, put content out there and then getting people's reactions, getting attendees' reactions, getting, at event, post event, and using that to sort of get a temperature read of, okay, this actually resonated with the community, this did not. And I think now that we're looking at least for the near term, we've been and actually one of the things that was on the feed was about content fatigue, and I'm sure, I think all of you guys are probably inundated with, here's another webinar, here's another this or that, so we don't want to add to that. And I think our perspective is, we only want to say something if it means something. And so we are taking in information from the industry, and we are doing our own internal analyses of, okay, this is actually making a difference, this is not, this sounds very salesy, this sounds like it's a genuine innovation. And to the extent possible, trying to add our voice or helping amplify some of these stories that we think are going to make a true difference. And so I think that's sort of our perspective. Don't say something because you can, say something because it should be said.
Right. And that kind of checking in with your audience is to understand kind of how we can meet them where they are and truly engage with them in service of them. That's the definition of community, right?
Yep.
Which is great. Amy, I know that.
So, okay, I just got two. Yeah, I got two things I'm like dying to share. Okay, so so these are just like innovations I've seen out in the world that got me really excited about virtual community or remote community. So one of them, and this was sort of to what Sofia said about when you ask your audience in advance what's on your mind. I'm part of this global virtual community called Daybreaker, and it's morning dance parties. And so their policy is if you invite 10 friends to the morning dance party, you will get featured on the dance cam, right? So there's 5,000 people around the world, like at the same time, but you get the full speaker view for like 30 seconds. And I was just thinking how rad that would be for something like Voice Talks, you know, that it's not just like what's on your mind and you get to put yourself in the chat, but you actually would get featured as a speaker, right? Like, and then that incentivizes people to want to share. And the other, and the other super inspiring one is, you know, we're talking about, somebody had put in the chat about global viewing parties for things, and that's a way to engage community. Well, tomorrow night, for example, the Beastie Boys documentary is coming out on Apple TV Plus. And, you know, we all went to high school with the Beastie Boys. We love them. So we decided, in addition, instead of having a viewing party, we were going to have Beastie Boys yoga. So we were going to do like a vinyasa flow class with all our friends on Zoom to all Beastie Boys music, and then we were going to watch the Beastie Boys documentary. It's just like the world is our oyster here, people,
Right.
with like how we can get creative with this stuff.
We got to fight for our right to party.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Gosh, I love Amy's energy. Can how do I get Amy as the Daybreaker every morning?
She's going to have to start the 8 a.m. show, isn't she?
Yeah, that's right.
Blackmon.
Amy, what's your secret?
What's your favorite coffee?
Kombucha.
There you
Green
go.
kombucha, people. Like gallons of it every day.
We just got a kombucha order from Costco. We feel so lucky.
So good.
So blessed. Well, you guys, I think we're at time on the Q&A, but I know that we could keep going. Should we do this another time? Let's do it another time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So we will. We'll have the next one on May 14th with for monetization, talking about and answering. There was a few questions about how to bring the trade show element in. There'll be conversation about that. There'll be conversation of what Fortune Magazine, what Tarsus, what Informa, and some other big brands and organizers are thinking about, and how to generate value both for sponsors and exhibitors, but also revenue for the organizer.
Somebody said the V word, value, you know, and I think that that's a lovely kind of continuation of this conversation, right? So what is the content that the audience values? And then, of course, you know, how do we translate that into the world of business? That's fantastic.
Well, thanks, everybody. Good luck to everybody out there.
Yeah, thank you. Stay safe.
Right.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Be
Bye.
well.
Bye.
All right.